for sake of time, I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Just everyone make sure you mute yourself, and then you can unmute yourself when we're in the question section of this webinar, when you have a question and you're called upon. So let me share my screen real quick. So thank you everyone for coming to our first webinar of the year for the graduate student group here at NAPB. We have a great lineup that I'll let Amani introduce after I'm done here, but I wanted to highlight that we have some other upcoming webinars. In February, we'll be having one focused on establishing a breeding program, and we've reached out to a couple plant breeders, so hopefully we'll have a good lineup for that one. And that just really focused on transition as a grad student into early career breeding as a plant breeder, so it should be a good. And then in March, we've set up a webinar with Dr. Rex Bernardo, so that one should be really good. And that will be on March 16th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And then in April, we'll have the commercial plant breeding committee put on a webinar on the interview and hiring process. That's sponsored by BASF, Corteva, and Driscoll's. And we have a pretty good lineup for speakers for that one as well. And that one is going to be on April 14th. And again, you can, I forgot, sorry. We also will have a social with the African Association of Plant Breeders. And that'll be on February 24th. And that's gonna be early in the day, so we can have both the African students and the NAPB students be able to participate. And you'll be able to find all these announcements in our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And now I'm gonna stop sharing and give it over to you, Amani.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar today. We have an exciting lineup of speakers who have a lot of experience in sharing science via different social media channels, predominantly LinkedIn and Twitter. In interest of time, I'm not going to introduce individual speakers today, and I'm going to let them do that. So our first speaker today is Dr. Sarah Potts, who works for Corteva. I'm handing it over to you, Dr. Potts.
All right, well, good morning. It's exciting to be here. I'm a little nervous, actually. It's been a while since I've talked in front of this many people. And honestly, it kind of hit me out of the blue. Amani and Lance contacted me about being in this webinar. I said, branding, I don't know anything about branding. It's like, well, I guess if I don't think I know anything about branding and they contacted me, I must have a secret brand that I'm not aware of. So maybe my branding is clueless about branding scientists who actually secretly does a good job. So my name is Sarah Potts, and I am a corn breeder with Corteva. I breed 108-day corn in Macomb, Illinois, which is where I am currently. And I've been between the two companies that I've worked with in Corteva with the company for 8 years now. Started out right after I finished my PhD up in a tiny little town called Olivia. It's up in Minnesota, about 2 hours west of the Twin Cities. And so I was there with the Dow AgroSciences side of the company for about 4 years. And now I'm almost coming into my 5th year. When the merger happened, I got moved back to Illinois, which is where I'm from. And I'm back down here in my home state now. I've been down here for about 5 years now. So like I said, I was kind of curious what my brand might be when I was reached out to. And I think what I really strive for in branding is authentic and easy to understand science, I guess is how I would say it. I did not come from an agricultural background at all. And my mom's a dietitian. My dad did work at John Deere, but as an accountant. So, I didn't really have a lot of ag experience. And in fact, I've given webinars before on how I accidentally became a corn breeder. So I think I've just very luckily found myself in the position that I've been in. So, when I work on my social media postings, and that is something I do very conscientiously. I just try and present what life as a corn breeder is actually like. You know, I want to give authentic science. One of the things that has really enticed me about commercial plant breeding, I think, is that, you know, we are very product driven. It is using science to create something that is really useful to people, and it's very real. It's very dirty. I spend a lot of work out in the field in the summers, and it's not a pretty job. I am a field breeder, and it's really what I love to do. And so that's really what I try and present, you know, as my brand. And I think for a while there, I thought of branding as kind of a dirty word, but it doesn't have to be, you know, conscientiously like, this is how I'm setting myself, you know, out. Like, just present who you are, and that is your brand. And so, you know, I am a scientist, I am a project manager, I'm very much a people person. So, you know, those are all things that I try and present about myself, you know, when I'm doing any of my social media postings. And so I guess kind of to get into how I've created that image, I think it's been really kind of a subconscious thing for me. I am very into the idea of social media as a concept, and I guess branding kind of is a result of that. And so, you know, really what I try and do is, like I said, I try and be authentic to what I'm doing out in the field. I like to cultivate conversations, because when I go to talk, like right now, this is like the boring part where I'm talking to you, but we're going to get into a discussion section soon. And that's, you know, when we can really cultivate the interesting questions and answers that people really want to hear. Like, I can tell you all these things that I think are interesting, but I want you as an audience to be able to participate and say, okay, these are the things I'm interested in. And so being able to have those conversations, I think, is really important. So, you know, when I post something, you know, sometimes I'll be like, okay, this is what I'm doing this week. I have a What's Up Wednesday series that I was doing last year. And I liked the posts themselves, they were fine. But what I really enjoyed was when people posted back and had a question or had a comment on it. Or, you know, I have a fair number of retiree plant breeding friends, and oh man, I really missed that. That was like the best time of the year for me. And it'd be fun to kind of like, you know, reintroduce them to, you know, kind of the reminiscing of plant breeding. I thought that was really fun. So like I said, cultivating conversations and just being really open to discussion is something that I like to do. And also adjusting to my audience, I think is really important, kind of talking in that, you know, authentic science vein. You know, my husband says I have my scientist voice, and it's, you know, where all of a sudden, like, I start like sometimes throwing out slang or technical terms or things like that. And I have to really watch myself when I'm talking to like a group of farmers who might not be as well versed in, you know, what germplasm might mean, or what, you know, certain types of markers mean and that type of stuff. So I have to really watch myself with slang sometimes in technical terms. But I also, to make sure people know that I can get like that and I am self-aware of it, a lot of times I'll say, you know, at the beginning of a presentation, I have a tendency to slip into this mode. When I say some words that you don't understand, please, for gosh sakes, stop me. And then people generally do, you know, they'll say, you just dropped this term. What does that mean? And then that, again, is another opportunity for discussion to develop around those kind of things. So that's something I kind of make sure people know I'm probably going to slip into when I start talking. And I want to be really approachable about science. So I make it really clear I'm open to questions and open to defining terms. And I'm very much a big believer in there's no such thing as a stupid. They all come from different backgrounds. I mean, I interviewed for, you know, my master's position. I was looking for something like, well, what do you know about germplasm? I had no idea what germplasm was, you know, looking into doing plant breeding. Well, could you tell me a little bit about it? And I mean, I came from, you know, a landscape design background. So, I mean, I could tell you, you know, all kinds of scientific names for things, but I didn't know the word for germplasm and what it meant. Another thing I think that I really concentrate on is, I think Amani said that the panelists today were mainly either on LinkedIn or Twitter. I don't know if it's an age thing, if I'm just like too old to be young and hip and on Twitter. But I do exclusively keep a LinkedIn as a very professional profile. I have Facebook that is very personal, and I have very strong security settings. So I mean, you can like see my photo and see who I am, but you can't really see any details unless I accept a friend request or something. But LinkedIn, I focus intentionally on it because I'm a big believer in doing something really good instead of spreading yourself too thin. And I mean, I could easily I take a lot of photos during field season. So, I could have an Instagram and be like, wow, look at this corn smut, or wow, look at the tassel on this. But I feel like the more I spread myself thin, the less quality my content is going to be on my main platform. So I really try and stick to just one, but to also be diligent about maintaining it. I try at least once a year to kind of update profile pictures, skill sets, as I develop those type of things. And really just work to make sure I'm being diligent. That being said, I'm working on my diligence for 2022 at the moment. Like I mentioned last year, I had a What's Up Wednesday post. And so every Wednesday I would post like, this is what life as a corn breeder is like this week. And that actually came from a social media webinar I attended on like having purpose to your social media posts. And I got involved. I did a one-time, it wasn't quite a Twitter takeover. It was like a channel takeover. So I got to do a takeover Tuesday, I think is what it was called. And so like they let me have full control of like Facebook and Twitter and stuff for the day with Corteva, and people were like, oh, that's nice scripting. And I'm like, no, they're letting me say anything I want. It's terrifying. I tend to be on the I talk too much probably side of things, and I'm always worried like the whole loose lips sink ships thing is going to be me. So I have to watch what I say sometimes because I can be a little too open. But again, being self-aware, I think, is a really important part of that. So like I said, I'm kind of working on which avenue to take my social media to this year. I've been throwing around some different ideas for like a weekly update concept, and hopefully you guys will see me on LinkedIn soon and I'll have some kind of a brilliant idea. So I think that's the end of my spiel for now, and I will pass it on.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Have you thought about Thoughtful Thursdays or something like that?
Thoughtful Thursdays. I will add it to my list I'm considering.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next speaker today is going to be Maya Allen, who is a graduate student in New Mexico. And maybe she is a Twitter queen, I want to say, at least for the plant breeding world, or I guess the biology world. And she's going to share some of her insights on using Twitter to share science and, how to communicate to your audience. The floor is yours, Maya.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here today. So just to give you, I'm going to talk mostly about my social media experience. I grew up with Twitter mostly. And then as an undergraduate, I managed some organization accounts. And so that's really shaped how I move through social media. And here you can find my information. My Instagram was branded when I was in college. So that's quite different than probably of what you're interested in. You probably want to follow my Twitter. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I've crafted my brand on Twitter. And then I'm going to talk about my organizing with Black Botanist Week, which was the social media campaign that occurs annually. And I'll do that at the end. So some important lessons that I've learned in grafting my social media is the first thing that I like to do is think about my goals that are platform specific. So that's an excellent point in terms of spreading yourself too thin, especially because different types of media are going to resonate differently on certain platforms. And then who is my audience? So who am I trying to engage? And then what kind of content is going to be resonating with that particular group? So if I wanted to probably access more undergraduate potential RAU students or undergraduates that are interested, and I might probably go to TikTok, right? And show what my life looks like or the opportunities and try and craft it in that direction. And then how am I going to identify success? Is it going to be my follower count, my retweets, how many people I interact with, and like the new people I meet? So if you're establishing your brand, you want to have some kind of trajectory that you know, I want to, maybe it's broaden my network and I want to meet all of these cool breeders, farmers, etc., and really get into that community. So these are the first things that I think you should start out with. And then you should think about designing your brand. And so the two major things is your photos. So when someone comes to your Twitter account or your LinkedIn, what is your profile picture telling them? So I chose this one because I think it's fun. And I like the cooler background in the back. And so you can also send it to your friends or your family and ask, like, what are some 3 words that pop into your head when you see this picture? And so you want something that's inviting, that's going to bring someone in. And then you want to talk about, or you want to think about your name and your biography. So you want a short to the point biography. So this will be kind of like that header in LinkedIn as well. And then your name too. So I use the L in my name. That's my middle name. And then I have my Black Botanist Week hashtag. That way I will come up if you search me. A couple of things to note, and sorry, this is a lot of information, but a couple of things to note is that I like to use special characters. So like these A's actually are different than this A. So what that does is you can't search Maya and me come up. So if you use any special characters to gauge attention or have like a unique text on your profile, keep that in mind. But the thing is, my brand is really surrounding my master's study taxon, so Glossopetalon. So because you can't access me by Maya, I'm hoping that you're actually going to remember Glossopetalon. That's a long handle and like it's an unusual name. And so I wanted people to learn a lot about this shrub that I was so excited about. So I'm trying to direct them in that direction. But with the handle, you probably want to, mine is not a good example. You probably want to have something catchy and easy to remember. That way that you're easy to find. And then if it's short, it's great to incorporate into tweets where you're constrained by that character limit. And then you also want to include, if you have a website or a lab website, having that on there. And then my color tone, so this is in dark mode, but my color tone is this blue tone for my header and my picture. And then on LinkedIn, I have like a very, I think it's actually the same one now. So I'm trying to keep, for my social media that's science oriented, trying to keep some consistency among platforms. That way I'm recognizable. And then I picked blue because I think it's a very cooling, calming color for people. Okay, so for content, although you're kind of trying to engage a particular audience, you still want to be open to multiple people who want to interact with you. So I gave the example earlier of maybe you're accessing TikTok for certain things or utilizing videos. So try and have things that are impactful for different audiences. So maybe you have some poetic spin to your science. So you can access people who are more interested in more artsy forms, something like that. And then the other thing you want to keep in mind is accessibility. So having alt text, which is just a description of your photo so that people who have difficulty seeing can read that and access that same content. You'll see this little alt thing here if you're on Twitter. And if you're in the US, you should probably try and have your content about at a 6th grade level, because that's generally the max grade level of reading comprehension in the US. And that's a great opportunity to learn how to put science or farming or anything into more accessible terms. Like you get to practice paraphrasing and explaining things to people. And then last for content, like with this different audience. So this particular tweet, right? I'm singing this song, but this was like a really popular song at this time on TikTok. And so that's for a very specific audience. Like not everyone's going to get that. And so that's like when you're crafting your content is just thinking about, oh, if I want to access some kind of pop culture reference, who is really that accessible to? And then I think I'm going to try and wrap up here. So special considerations, we can dive into this a little bit more during the discussion, but one of the things that, especially being a woman of color in science and having a very different friend group relative to my work colleagues is that one of the things that people suggested to me was to have a separate personal account. I ended up deleting that. So when I first started out on Twitter, I did have a separate one, and I morphed that together into my personal account. So ultimately, the reasoning for that suggestion to me was that you don't want to be stereotyped or pigeonholed in a particular into a particular stereotype based on what you're tweeting and your interactions on in a very professional space. So you'll have to consider that. And then the other thing is, if you're going to show a little bit more of your personality, I would also keep that at the forefront. So if you want to be known for your science, maybe it's best not to share too much personal information, because that shapes people's perspective of you. I chose 3 things that I was willing to share from my personal life, which is football. I live tweet football. I share pictures of my dog because she's so cute. And then sometimes I'll share things like about family time, like holidays, stuff like that. Okay, so Black Botanist Week was founded in 2020. These are the organizers. And so we created this hashtag and a lot of those same things, goal setting, figuring out what are we trying to accomplish, who are we trying to engage. Those are the same conversations that we had during this social media campaign. So if you're interested in following Black Botanist Week, there's to your left-hand side is the account. And this has really helped me increase my follower count on social media. And so I will place our taxon article that we wrote reflecting on this particular week if you're interested in. And then the last thing I want to highlight for you all is that if you're interested in science communication or really teaching online, Faith Kearns wrote this book called Getting to the Hearts of Science Communication, and she goes through historic and then future possibilities for accessing social media to communicate science. So I'll put this link in the chat too, because then you can learn from all of the social media campaigns and what people have done successfully to communicate science. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. That was a very insightful presentation and very detailed. You gave, I'm hoping, everybody that is attending today quite a bit to think about on how they want to start their social media journey. So I hope if anybody has questions to wait, to hold them on until the end, when we will have a 15-minute Q&A. So our next speaker today is Dr. Jessica Rutkowski, who is a wheat breeder in Illinois. And she is also, according to me, the most famous plant breeder in Twitter, because she tweets quite a bit and I really enjoy her insights. And I thought she could share her journey onto how she became so popular and how she allocates time in her day to actually tweet about the science that interests her. So the floor is yours, Dr. Jessica.
All right. Oh, thank you so much for that introduction. And it's kind of a hard act to follow, because in the beginning, I was like, I don't know what to really say. I think everybody uses social media for different reasons. I got into Twitter just for fun. Like, I wanted to share my day-to-day experiences and thoughts, and I kind of like feel like part of a community. So I think as a plant breeder, we tend to be spread out across the country in a lot of different universities and companies. And so I think it can kind of like feel a bit lonely, and it's just nice to share and have people interact and like have these common experiences. And so that's what I really enjoyed about it. And that's kind of what got me into it. I didn't think about it as a networking or a branding opportunity. I did definitely want to have a way to get, like, if I was hiring someone, I kind of wanted to have that ability to spread the word, and Twitter has helped with that. And so that was, I guess, one of my objectives in the beginning, aside from just the entertainment value of it. And so I don't know, I just wrote down a few tips, I guess, because that's what came to mind as I was preparing for this webinar. So just like four things. first one, just think before you post something. So I always kind of ask 2 questions in my head, like if something I'm gonna post, might it affect other people? So could it be offending somebody, or could it make someone feel bad about the work that they do? And is that my intention? Because there's no right or wrong way to do things, and maybe you want to be controversial, but just think, like, how might this affect other people, and is that really what I want to do? Do I want to have that effect? And then, like, what kind of message am I sending? Because everything that you post will send some kind of message about you or something. It'll reflect on you, whether or not that's your intention or not. So just think, like, if I post this, what message does that send? And is that what I want? Is that the message I want? And oftentimes I'll want to tweet something, and then I'll actually write it down in my notes, and then I'll think about it for a day or 2, because sometimes, you're not sure, like, is this going to be, sounds cool to me, or it sounds kind of cute or funny, but maybe, who knows? I learned when I was like long time back, when I joined Twitter, I didn't really tweet much. I tweeted a couple times, and there were things just blow up, like totally controversial, and I had no clue that was going to happen. So not to scare you or anything, but just be aware, like, there are a lot of things that can be controversial. You have no idea that's what's going to happen. So I guess the second tip then, so number 1, think before you post and sit on it maybe. 2 is like use photos and videos. So I guess what I kind of enjoy is just photos, things that look cool or kind of funny, or something like a photo with a clever caption. And because when you're scrolling, most time you scroll until something catches your eye, and that usually is a photo. And so that, I think, is just nice to have on somebody's feed. So then the third thing that's worked for me, and I think everybody has their style, but I just like to keep it brief. Just don't say a whole lot of words. Even though, yeah, there is a character limit, so if it's Twitter, it has to be short anyway. But even that, sometimes if it's too long, that's also a lot to read, and people are scrolling through like thousands of tweets, and so also I find that you're less likely to say something offensive if you say less. So sometimes, like, if I can't think of what to say, I have a photo, I'll just put very few words and leave it at that. And sometimes the photo just speaks for itself, when in doubt, just keep it brief, or if you can't think of what to say, just say less. And then number 4, I guess, for me personally, I just try to reflect day-to-day life. So if I'm reading a lot, I'll post something cool that I've read. So if I'm doing a lot of field work, I'll post about that, something I saw in the field, or like something that I just wish I could share with somebody. Like, oh, I find something cool, I wish I could show somebody. But sometimes you're all by yourself, or you're with only a couple other people. You just want to share something cool, something interesting. So just like, if you can't think of what to say, just think about, like, pay attention, when you're out somewhere and you're reading, or you're looking at your plots or whatever, you just pay attention. And also, like, pay attention to the thoughts in your head. So sometimes you can have a thought pops into your head randomly, and you think, oh, I should tweet that, And I think, when you're not into Twitter, you don't really pay attention to those things. So until you kind of get used to it, and then you can sort of have ideas more. So that's basically my 4 tips, I guess. So think before you post. That's like number 1. Be really careful about not just what you're saying, but how will other people be affected, and what kind of message that other people might get from that, even if that's not intended. Then use photos and videos. Keep it short, especially if you don't know what to say. And then, just draw from your day-to-day life. that's basically my spiel. So thank you. Thanks again. I look forward to some of the questions.
Thank you. That was very insightful. I'm glad that you gave like 4 tips that people can follow when they're doing, or at least these are, a post-it note you can keep on your, on your device that you use to tweet and remind yourself before you do that. So I love that. Thank you so much. So our next speaker today is Rachel Weenstra, who is the literal Twitter queen, Tiller queen. And I don't know if she meant to make it like a, roll off saying the Twitter queen, and that's how she ended up with Twitter queen, but I'm going to let her tell that story. And that's how I found her, using the Tiller queen hashtag. So I would love for her to share her experiences.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Amani. I'm so excited to be here. It was such a cool experience to be invited to talk at something like this. It was never my goal to become the Tiller queen or like be active on Twitter. It just kind of happened over the last 3 years. And it's been kind of a process of learning how to interact with people and to use Twitter as a professional development tool, which was kind of something that was a little bit odd to me to think about for a while. But I'm just excited to share a little bit about that today. A little bit of background about myself. So I'm a GRA and a GTA PhD student at K-State, Kansas State University in Manhattan in the agronomy department. So I am not a breeder and I don't have any connections with that. I'm more on the crop production side, specifically studying the impacts that corn tiller expression has in crop production. In the future, I would love to be an extension or teaching. So that's kind of the career path that I'm interested in. And my platforms of choice are, of course, Twitter. And then I also have a personal website that I house everything on also. So those two are my main ones, but we're going to focus on Twitter today. So building an online brand. This is kind of something that I think is really scary to think about. For me, when I started thinking about wanting to maybe try to do something like this, it's just a lot to absorb. And I'm sure that all of us have kind of this image in our mind of what we want or expect when we think of an online presence. Like there's some kind of goal or some kind of image that we have, I think. And similar to what Maya mentioned, I think it's really important to have lay out what you want. Like why do you want an online presence? Is it just because everyone else has one? Is it because you have a certain goal that you're wanting to reach? Build off of that. For me, my why was I just wanted to be able to share the research that I was doing and connect with people and really feel like I was able to share the research I was doing with the community that research would impact, which would be farmers. So my main goal was to interact with farmers. And I think that one of the big things that people are nervous about when you're starting posting on Twitter or wanting to do something like that, similar to your research, is that people won't engage with you. That you'll post this stuff, no one's going to like it, no one's going to comment. Like it's scary to put yourself out there. As a grad student, you have these things that you've created. It's like a piece of you that you've worked on for so long and you put it out there for everyone to see, and it's kind of scary. But I think it's really important to step back and think about engagement in a different way, because it's not their job to engage with us. It's our job to engage with them, right? So interacting with the audience that you're wanting to target is really important. So initiate that conversation, similar to what Sarah was talking about the discussion and really fostering that kind of environment. So follow farmers, follow the people you want to connect with, whether that's other scientists or other people. Comment on their posts. Like for me, if I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see a picture of corn and there's tillers on that corn plant, I am going to be liking that picture, commenting on it. I'm going to ask them where they are, what hybrid that is, what plant density they're working with. Like, tell me all about this picture. I want to hear from you. And that has helped me so much with like gaining, not really maybe a reputation, but just feeling connected with the audience, even on a online platform. Another thing is to realize and really step back and evaluate when things are or are not working. Everything that you try to do is not going to be successful and it's not going to stick, and that's okay. So don't be afraid to try something new if what you're doing isn't working. If you're not getting the level of engagement that you're wanting, you're not hitting the goals that you were like hoping that it would be, try something different, switch it up, and don't be afraid to do that. But when you find what works, be consistent with that. And this is something that I think Maya did a great job talking about with the colors or your hashtag or your profile picture. So for me, I've had the same profile picture for a long time and I don't change it because everyone associates that image with me. And I've had multiple people come up to me like at meetings and stuff and be like, yeah, I knew you from your profile picture and you were wearing that purple shirt in your profile picture. So people remember that kind of thing. And with the Tiller Queen, so I did not come up with that. That was not my idea. My advisor actually started calling me that and posted the Tiller Queen hashtag on Twitter. And then farmers started using the Tiller Queen hashtag. So I grabbed it and I ran with it. And that's who I am, you know. I have the Tiller Queen in my logo that you see on this slide, and it's on my business cards, and it's everywhere because that's what everyone calls me. And it's fun. But just being consistent with that and what you're doing, so people recognize you because you are building an image in people's minds. And then the last one, and I already kind of touched on this, but don't get discouraged. So like for me, it's taken me 3 years to build the level of engagement that I have today. It took 3 years. So you can't expect, you know, like a 2-step 5-minute recipe. You're going to get 1,000 followers. Your engagement is going to be great. It's a process and it's a learning process. And I think that that's something you need to give yourself some grace and be patient. And that is really, really important. So just thinking about my process when I'm crafting a post, I put together some questions that I kind of subconsciously go through in my mind when I'm thinking about that. So what worked before? What did people engage with before? And how can I learn from that? Is there a specific kind of post that people were commenting on more or they were more interested in? So how can I learn from that and maybe emulate that again? What about my day will be interesting or unique? What cool things will I see? So I think that Jessica did a great job talking about this, like her day-to-day, seeing things like, oh, that's cool, I want to share that with someone. Realizing that as grad students and researchers, we see things and do things every day that might be mundane to us. Like, this is not anything special. I do this every day. But to someone else, you know, that's maybe not involved in your specific discipline or even in your discipline, but doing a different kind of research would think that that was so cool. You know, like I'm not a breeder. And so learning about the research that you're doing or learning more about breeding, like I would love to learn more and see what that's like, because I have no idea what that would be like. So just kind of stepping back and realizing that, you know, what I'm doing is cool and other people would be interested in seeing that, I think is a really good mental shift. And then what is my audience currently talking about? Which is something that engaging with the audience that you want is really important. A great example of this, so this past year in Kansas, which is where I'm at, we had a really cool spring and planting season at the beginning of the season. And so with those cooler temperatures, we were seeing a lot more tillers in corn. And so tying that into my post and talking about temperature really generated a lot of engagement because it was relevant and the farmers could relate to that. It was something that was interesting to them in that moment. And because I was on Twitter and talking to them and seeing kind of what their concerns were with the early, their cool temperatures and those kinds of things, really helped me connect better and create something that was more interesting to them. And then Sarah also mentioned pictures, and I think that's a great point. Pictures and visuals, they're worth 1,000 words, and I know that's really cliche, but it's true. So thinking about, you know, how can I really communicate this to people and make them feel like they're involved in seeing what I'm seeing. And I think that pictures and visuals really help with that also. So just to kind of, perfect, thank you, Amani. just to kind of wrap this up a little bit. So beyond this list, I want to add that you should follow people who have similar goals as you, that are, you want to be like that person. Find people on Twitter that are good at communicating science, that are good at connecting with people, that are good at connecting with farmers. Whatever your goal is, find those people and follow them and see what they're doing. Learn. We're all here to learn from each other. And then follow your audience too, like I said, just to connect with them more. These 3 things I use regularly, and I strongly recommend to everyone. Grammarly for typos and tones. So on Twitter, all the people know about you is the words that they're reading, right? So if there's a typo in your post, people will notice that and they'll remember that. And it kind of like maybe messes with your credibility a little bit just because you don't sound as smart, right? Twitter Analytics, if you're on Twitter, this is a free program that you can evaluate what your top tweet was, what's working, what's not, which is really, really helpful for me. And then Sprout Social. I love this website. So sproutsocial.com/insights. It's got a lot of really helpful tips and information. It's actually geared toward marketing for businesses, but they have a blog and they talk a lot about posting on social media and things to consider, things you maybe wouldn't have thought about. I've gained a lot of really helpful things from this website and always recommend it to everyone. So also that, but beyond that, if there's ever anything I can do to answer questions, looking forward to discussion here too, but my email is here. Feel free to DM me on Twitter. Excited to connect with all of you and just really grateful for the opportunity to learn from the other panelists and visit with all of you today. So thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Amani.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I love that you actually gave them some tips on how to, how to draft their tweet using like the different resources so that they sound smart. Because I learned the hard way that tweets are not editable. So you have to delete and start over again if you find yourself with a typo or, what you say sounds differently than what you had intended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you to all the panelists for giving some really interesting advice on how someone can get started. So as of now, we are going to open, if you want to unmute yourself in order to talk for any questions that we have. I requested the students to post any questions if they have right now. So if anybody has questions, please either post them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to raise your hand. If not, I'm going to ask a question from the pool that you guys submitted when you signed up. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to start with one of the questions that I think was very interesting, and it's something I'm personally also interested in, is I don't know who submitted this, but how do you suggest building a habit of continuously establishing and sharing your brand on media sites? Is this something that should be incorporated into our weekly to-do list, or is there a better way to go about this process? So I will let you guys take the lead if you all want to take a shot at it, to be brief, and please somebody answer the questions that your audience have.
I can answer it very briefly. I am a super forgetful person, so I just set a calendar reminder on Wednesdays, and at 7:30 on Wednesdays, my calendar reminder comes on, and I do my social media for the week.
That's awesome.
I'll add something to this really fast too. So thinking about this, I had tried to do something like that, but I found that having it on my to-do list added a lot of stress to my life that it was not healthy, right? So there's got to be boundaries for things. And just, it's good to be consistent, but at the same time, we're grad students with other responsibilities, and this is an extra thing. And you're the only one that's putting pressure on this. That's something that I had to step back and think about, the only person putting pressure on your performance on social media is yourself. So, I think it's different for everyone. There's not one best recipe for everyone to follow, I think. but just kind of giving yourself, like I said, give yourself some grace and be patient as you figure it out, I think is the best advice that I can give for that.
Yeah, I would just add what I like to do, especially like to alleviate, oh, I have to post every single time, is I do like to schedule my tweets in advance, especially if like I'm advertising a talk or something like that. So I'll sit down, draft the content, and just schedule the tweets at the using the Twitter analytics like Rachel suggested at the times that I realize have highest engagement. So it looks like I'm tweeting, but I'm not. Like
I did not know you could do that, but it's good to know that you can schedule tweets as well.
It has to be on a computer though. I don't think you
Yeah.
can do it on your phone, unfortunately.
Okay, that's good to know.
So
¿Cómo?
just yes,
Sí.
chime in here. So
Clayton, can you- Clayton, can you-
Can you mute yourself, please?
Here,
Whoever that is. Okay. Sorry.
yeah, just to chime in. I mean, I do it whenever I feel bored, like I have some downtime at home, you know, or like anytime I'm just on social media and I'll you know, put my tweets. I don't really spend out, you know, a lot of time or like think like, oh, I haven't tweeted in a while or anything like that. So yeah, definitely. I think that in my approach, like it should be kind of a source of fun as well. Not like it's just another thing to do. So yeah, and we should be working on our research. So that's number one. Otherwise we won't have anything to tweet about. So
Oh, that's that's exactly what the follow-up question is, though. Someone asked me, what do you guys do when life becomes too monotonous and you do the same things daily and there's nothing new? How do you engage then? Or do you engage then?
Yeah, so that's a really hard question. For me, like thinking about my grad school experience specifically, as a agronomy graduate student with field research, you know, during the summer, I'm out in the field doing all kinds of cool stuff every day. I have pictures and stuff that I can share that I'm seeing. And then during the winter, the reality as a grad student is I'm sitting at my computer in R for hours on end. And that's not really very exciting. So this is where interacting with followers, I think, becomes really, really important, and like interacting with your community instead of having to come up with content yourself. Maybe just spending some time really interacting with the people that your audience and your followers and the people that you're following. So like for me, as an example, I have followers in Argentina and South Africa. So their growing season is flipped from ours. And so there's growers and farmers that are posting pictures of corn plants and talking about their growing season. So I can interact with them and just finding, that's a way that I remain active, and also just publications and stuff, other things, meetings, extension meetings, stuff that I'm involved in that may be different, but also exciting and things that people could be interested in to share.
Thank you, Rachel. There was a question in the chat. I'm trying to find it. Okay, Renuka asked, do I need to have a disclaimer that says my tweets are my own? Plus a follow-up, do I need to inform my advisor that I'm on Twitter? What are your thoughts on it?
I guess I can start. Oh, Jessica was going to take it. Go ahead, Jessica, please.
I was gonna say I don't think you need to, as long as I don't think you need to inform your advisor, as long as you're kind of thinking, before you post something, how it might affect other people, and making sure like it's coming off the way that you want it to be, like really representing who you are. And then about like adding that disclaimer, I don't think that's required. At least I hope not, because I think if you have an institutional account, then that's something like with an official logo from your university or your organization, and that's something different than you personally. So to you, it's like, I think it's assumed it's your own, but you might want to check, with your institution.
Yeah, we actually at Corteva have a social media policy. So, I mean, especially when you get into the workforce, and I don't know what your policy is as a grad student, but when you get into the workforce, that is something that you do need to consider. And yeah, I was speaking earlier as how, authenticity is my thing. So sometimes I feel like that's like the statement of like, oh, these are opinions or my own and all that. It's kind of intrusive, I guess, to my brand. So sometimes if there's something I know that's going to rile people up or something, and again, that's with like thinking about the consequences of your post. Sometimes that's one of the ones I'll just hold on to and probably won't post, which is actually a little frustrating for scientists. Like I have some strong thoughts, but it's just not worth all the fuss sometimes to
I would just add also to this, as far as your advisor and things, make sure that if you're posting about research and projects, that if it's if the funding is from your advisor, just make sure that you're tagging people that need to be included in things. And maybe if it's something that potentially could be sensitive or something that you need to be careful with how you word it, maybe run it by your advisor before you post it. Something for me that I forgot to mention earlier too is, as far as engagement, I tag all of the project sponsors in all of my Twitter posts. And so like Pioneer and Corteva interact with me regularly. Their social media accounts will retweet my stuff and everything, which has been really helpful for gaining followers and visibility and stuff, which has been kind of neat. So just make sure that like the politics behind what you're saying, that you're aware of that and sensitive to that when you're posting things regarding your research and your program and stuff.
That's great, Rachel. I would also add to that and say, if you're posting about your research, just to make sure like it's at a place where it's already published or close enough that you have already presented and it's like associated with you, so that you can, you can present it. And sometimes when you are using the similar images in your print on your manuscripts, to be careful when you share things like that. So anyway, there's another follow-up interesting question that I think is applicable to this panel is, should there be a difference in the type of content you post in different social media platforms, like on LinkedIn versus Twitter? Can it be more casual in Twitter compared to LinkedIn?
I guess I can jump again. I think that one of the things that I really love about Twitter is how informal and conversational it is. The character limit really makes you kind of step back and be really creative with how you're wording things, being concise and really clear and very short, sweet, and to the point kind of messaging. I do have LinkedIn. I'm not active on LinkedIn, so I can't really speak to that as much. But that's one of the reasons why I love Twitter so much, because I feel like we have a really unique opportunity to communicate science in a really concise and it's really great practice too, just for doing that kind of thing, communicating in that way.
I would agree. I think that your content should probably be curated to the platform. So something I've noticed on Instagram is that people are not going to want to read a big old long post. They're interested in the actual image. Whereas, and then Twitter, like I think everyone's pretty much mentioned, like the pictures or videos help grab attention in timelines, and then people will generally read. I don't use LinkedIn as much, but I like to fledge out and have more words in LinkedIn. So I'm a little bit more robust in that setting, just because I think people will read it, but I actually don't have any analytics to back that up.
I found out that you can actually find analytics in LinkedIn, that you can click on your post, just like how in Twitter it gives you like, that graph to see trends. It will actually tell you how long people spend on the post, like in general, on an average. Like I noticed that when I started doing like long posts. So it's kind of curious. And you can use all of this data to decide on what type of content you want to post. Like start with one, and if that doesn't work, maybe you need to change things up a little bit. Sorry to jump in.
No, that was good. That was really, really helpful. I use the Twitter analytics a lot for that kind of thing. So it's good to know that other platforms have that too.
Okay, so there's one more question in the chat asked by Mary. Are there any classic rookie mistakes that you have noticed that folks or yourself have made when starting to build a presence online?
Yes, I have one that popped into my mind immediately, so I'll say it. I think people have the tendency to want to like vent out or complain. They're frustrated. And I think that it's maybe just not the best venue, maybe pick a different platform like Facebook or something where it's a little bit more controlled. But yeah, I would just say, try to save that for something else and try not to vent out.
And I would say be very conscious of what you're posting. I think some people just start into it and this is something I think is cool, or oh, look at this thing. I recently had a friend I was kind of looking over, and I went to do a little online snooping, and when I saw it, I was just thinking, oh wow, you really need to update your, and I wasn't thinking about it like as specifically a brand, but all the photos were of them doing kind of good time stuff, and I'm very well aware we all have personal lives, but people are going to find you online when you are job searching. People do. And if they find a bunch of pictures of you doing all these recreational activities but nothing about work or any kind of a professional presence that you really, if you're in the job market, you should be thinking about curating your professional presence. Just be aware that the majority of pictures will be seen by somebody who it matters for. So just be careful what you're posting.
Very sound advice.
And Amani, I would add one more thing with this that just always stands out to me when I'm thinking about this. I think it's really key for us to prioritize quality over quantity. One thing that's really frustrating to me, and others have expressed it to me also, is posting too much it's something that people will stop following you if you are posting too much. I think that's something that I've noticed. And so spending the time and coming up with a quality post, like don't just throw everything out there that comes to your mind, but take some time and put something nice together. And the engagement that you'll see with a post like that is, far better than posting a lot as a strategy just to get a bunch of followers. Because I think that that's sometimes something that people will do. So just prioritizing engagement and the quality of your content and interactions over the number of followers, the number of posts, all of those kinds of things, I think is a really important thing to think about.
Great advice, Rachel. On a last note, I just want to say that from what I have experienced, that Jessica was mentioning about Twitter responses, it spiraling into basically a virtual war. If you have like any feeling like, oh, I just want to be so mad at this person and I want to tag them, I know it's like really old advice, but take a walk or count to 10 before you do that, because you can delete the tweet, but it's gonna be part of it's out there, and whatever happens in the digital world, it's forever. So with that note, I think we are at the end of our time today. So I strongly encourage the participants of today to reach out to our panelists via these professional platforms. If you have any follow-up questions, they have expressed that they'd be happy to answer your questions. You can either tag them on your questions or DM them if you prefer that. We have shared where you can reach out to them. I think Sarah can be found via typing her name in LinkedIn. But if you specifically need it, I will probably post it in the chat before we leave. So thank you today for attending. I just want to say that NAPB GSWG has several upcoming meetings, and I hope that you would continue to participate in these events. And thank you for all of your time today.